Thank you everyone for that round of introductions. We have our panel here. We can start with giving everyone a chance to introduce themselves and their previous mooting experiences. So, Hamrawi, do you want to take this? Oh, Atran, do you want to take this?
Would have been better if Hamrawi took it. So hi guys, how's it going? It's nice to meet you guys. So my name is Atran Tadesse. I was a law student at Attire University, now a political science and sociology major at the University of Cape Town. So I've only been part of two moot court competitions. Both were held in the same year in 2019, when I was in my second year of law school. So the first was an internal moot court competition. It was held in Attire University. And the second one was the national IHL, International Humanitarian Law moot court competition, which was held in Wallo University at Desse. So the purpose of the internal moot court competition was to, pick the team that would compete later on that year in the national IHL moot court competition. And, all those Attire University mooters, all those students wishing to compete, they teamed up in threes. We were pit against one another until, two teams remained. And the final team was sort of handpicked by Dr. Jonas, who was just here earlier. So that is to say that the oral competition at Desse, at Wallo University, that wasn't our first exposure to the oral advocacy aspect of mooting. We had done it at a smaller scale. So we had a general idea of what would be awaiting for us like at Wallo University. So during that time, we learned how to prepare written submissions, how to address the moot court, how to prepare our oral submissions. And we also studied the course material then, because we were only, as I mentioned, like in our second year, me and Hamrawi. So we were learning the course material in the process of preparing for the competition. So once we were done and once we were selected to compete on behalf of Attire University, we started preparing our memorials. Our coach gave us a number of readings to do and to incorporate into our submissions, provided us with sample memorials and whatnot, which helped. We sacrificed a lot of sleep, but we qualified for the oral rounds at Desse. So at Desse, we were to compete with 8 teams from 8 different universities. And that year, our school won best team, best memorial, and best speaker. So we passed on to the continental competition, which was held in Arusha, Tanzania. It was an all-African IHL moot court competition. I was only fortunate enough to attend the national moot court competition, though I wasn't a part of the continental moot court competition. Hamrawi was, so she will share that aspect. I bet it was grueling, but a rewarding experience, I bet. So yeah, that's as far as my moot court experience goes.
Thank you, Atran. Hamrawi, do you want to go next?
Okay, thank you. So yeah, like Atran has said, most of the things we've done quite similarly. So just to start off, my name is Hamrawi Kelemu. I'm also a 5th year law student currently in my graduating year. The first few mooting experiences I had, I shared with Atran. We did the internal and the national IHL moots together. And Atran has become very humble in saying that Addis Ababa University won Best Oralist, when in fact she individually won Best Oralist. So credit where credit is due. She's an amazing oralist, of course. Other than that, I continued on to the African IHL moot court, like was previously mentioned by Atran. I don't think there's any moot, and I'll be honest with you, that is easy in particular. The African moot was no exception. We would have trainings for the first maybe 2-3 days that we were there. And then we would have the actual moot court competition for the last 2 days in our time there. So not only are you dealing with a new environmental climate, you're dealing with being away from home, but you're also having to balance the act of learning in the day, practicing in the night, and then doing your moot court competition at the end of the day. So definitely a different set of skills that were needed at every stage of the moot court. I always say that I moot like it's an Olympic sport. I don't think there's ever been a moot court competition that has been present in Addis Ababa University that I haven't at least tried out for. So based on that, I did the 3 moot courts for IHL, which Atran had previously mentioned. I then moved on to arbitration. And under arbitration, which is more a tribunal than a court actually, I was a part of the Vis Moots in Vienna, which was held virtually because of COVID. And coincidentally, that moot ended earlier this week. And then in preparation for the Vis moot, I was part of a Nairobi pre-moot, another pre-moot called IAC, and then a third pre-moot called the Middle East pre-moots. I'm currently part of the Nuremberg moot court competition that is going to be held in, I think, 2 months, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, about 6 or 7 moot court competitions that I have under my belt. Yeah.
Impressive resume. And then last, you have Darik. It's raining here, so I apologize for the background. Darik is actually a previous teammate of mine in a competition. So over to you.
Okay, thank you, Jerusalem. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Jerusalem mentioned, my name is Darik Tsegaye. I graduated back in 2019, but I represented Addis Ababa University when I was a fourth-year law student. We were able to represent Addis Ababa University at first, and then we went to Hawassa University for the 2018 National Moot Court competition. With regards to my mooting experience, our very first, me and my teammates' very first experience was during the internal moot court competition that was hosted by Addis Ababa University. That was a very exciting and a very nerve-wracking moment, but overall it was a very exciting experience because we were able to garner more points as a team. We were able to go to Hawassa University and represent our team. There in Hawassa University, we ranked 3rd place, but yeah, so this is like an overall view of my experience.
Thank you, Darik. Moving on to the next question. So why did you decide to take part in your mooting competitions respectively? So what motivated your decision to participate? We can start with that.
Okay, so to be honest, my friend here, Hamrawi, is the one that signed me up for the competition. She did run it past me before doing so, but she thought it was a good idea and I trust her judgment. So that was the initial reason. But then other factors played into my decision as well. I used to participate in similar competitions back in high school. I did Model United Nations and I've been part of a few debate clubs. So I figured this would be as valuable an experience as that was. Not to say that mooting and debating and participating as a delegate in MUN is the same thing. It's not, but the skill sets that you develop during these competitions, you don't get from formal education alone. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. And then I also knew it'd be rigorous. I'd watched enough movies and series to know that it'd be demanding. So yeah, I knew that I would learn how to conduct, legal research, analysis, practice writing, and verbal reasoning. And it would be a great opportunity to hone my lawyerly skills. So yeah, that contributed to my decision. But besides the practical skills that I knew I'd gain, I also knew that there would be exposure. You're competing on behalf of your university. There are a lot of observers. If you perform well, you're acknowledged, and that sort of opens up additional doors of opportunities for you. And as you progress to the next stage of the competition, there's also the traveling and the networking with a bunch of students from diverse backgrounds, and you interact with academics and practicing lawyers, which brings its own benefits. So all these cumulative factors kind of contributed to my decision to participate in the competition. Yeah.
Hamrawi, can we have your opinion next? And then Darik.
Yeah, I think the very first reason, or whatever started the domino effect of why I chose to start participating in moot courts, is I had a senior that was also going to Addis Ababa University, who is also in this call, and later became my coach. and his name was Amin. And he was like, there's this opportunity, you should really consider trying it. And as Atran mentioned, the first moot courts experience that we had was communal. And we were in our second year of law school, and we were supposed to be talking about an IHL topic, which is a fourth year subject, and we still haven't done it. So I said, yeah, okay, maybe I'll consider it, but I'll only consider it if Atran does it. So I actually consider my first mooting experience to be the efforts I put in to convince Atran to go to a competition where we knew nothing until we had to study everything ourselves. So the very first reason that I started was just because a senior was like, I think you have characteristics that would fit in well with mooting. And then, like I said, I think once you get into mooting, it's very hard to get out of it. There is something that is quite addictive about, like Atran said, being in a very stressful situation, but coming out on top. And that doesn't necessarily even mean winning the competition, but being able to say, listen, I know I've dedicated 4 or 5 months of my time to this, and I have the laws down, I have my arguments down, and this is the best that I've done, becomes a very invigorating feeling. So I just decided to continue in mooting the experiences as a whole.
Darik, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Sorry, because I have a bad connection. I'm going in and out. Actually.
No problem.
Okay, so I think one of the reasons I participated in moot court competition was I was very much interested in the subject matter itself, IHL. Like during our competition, it was the case revolved around IHL, and actually a friend suggested that I participated in the competition. At first, I held back and did not want to participate, but later on, I was like, I had nothing to lose, so I just joined with my friends and my team, with my teammates. The other one is representing your respective university, and competing in moot court is one of the most important and unique law school experiences that you might not be able to do again. It's also a time where you could taste your skills, such as your public speaking skills, your quick thinking skills, your courtroom etiquettes, and as such similar skills. And it's one of the few instances where you get to actually bring these skills to life, and where you could actually represent your university at a national level. So these reasons kind of are the reasons why I wanted to join the competition.
Definitely. I mean, looking back in those 5 years, some of the experience that really stands out is definitely the moot court. So I understand. Moving on to our third question. So what was your overall experience like, including what was the most challenging thing for you, or what was the most memorable experience you've had? We'll go Atran, Hamrawi, Darik again.
Hamrawi is laughing because she knows what experience I'm about to share. But anyway, so the moot court experience, it was intensive to say the least. Hours of writing, researching, and studying, especially because the subject matter was completely new to us. But we had an exceptional coach, and he made us practice a lot repeatedly. And I had great teammates as well. So that compensated for everything, for my weak points as well. So it made it bearable. But memorable experience at Desse. So we qualified for the final rounds, and we were to compete against Haramaya University. They were the other team that qualified. And we received additional sets of facts for our case, and we were playing the defense. So we were expected to prepare overnight and compete on the following day. And mind you, the competitions thus far were held back to back. So each day we'd be competing, and each night we'd be rehearsing for the following day. So the night before the finals, we met in our room, and the three of us and our coach, we were preparing for the following day. And as I had said, we were given additional sets of facts. So we were expected to analyze that in light of the original case and apply IHL rules and the relevant case precedents and whatnot. So there were new counts, crimes for which this one actor in the conflict was being convicted for. And out of nowhere, in the middle of preparing, I break down in laughter, and I could not stop. And when I started laughing, Hamrawi started laughing, and Kursama, who's not here today, but was our co-counsel, Izane, she started laughing. We couldn't compose ourselves for a good 5 to 7 minutes. But finally, I left the room, tried to like keep myself together and came back and we went on practicing. But that's when I knew that the competition was taking its toll on my mental health. And anyways, that was the most memorable experience that I had, you know, besides all the interaction that we did with the students there at Desse. And that was, yeah, that's it.
So I think first part of the question is overall Moot experience, like has been mentioned by
can you
every
still
other.
hear me?
Go on, Hamrawi.
All right. So yeah, like has been mentioned by all the other panelists, and I'm sure if you talk to any other person that has any mooting experience, the one word that you're going to hear throughout is stressful. And that is not an understatement, because you are at this time a full-time student. I'm sure you're also doing other things. I'm sure you have other family and societal responsibilities. But mooting in itself is a very time-taking and draining task. So I think my overall Moot experience was definitely positive. There's a reason that I keep coming back to it, of course. But it was really, really, really stressful. And I think it made me deal with a lot of external pressures and handling it at the same time, which is a skill that you will use regardless of what you're doing in life. So better to have it now as opposed to learning to do this when you're 35, right? So yeah, my most memorable and challenging experience, I knew for a fact that Atran was going to mention our mental break that we had. She also forgot to mention that when we had this like momentary lapse in judgment, it was 2 a.m. and everybody else was asleep because all the other teams had done and were finished with their mooting experience. So it was us just crying in a moment of extreme stress and extreme laughter. And there was no reason, there was nothing to trigger the laughter except our own stress. So I think that was definitely the most memorable one. The most challenging, the last, and I'm not sure how applicable this is going to be for you, but the last few moots that we had to do, because of COVID, we had to do it virtually. And that is a completely different court demeanor, the way that you address people, things that you've never had to worry about. You're thinking about lighting, you're thinking about, am I gonna have electricity, internet? So all that and dealing with the move to virtual moots was very challenging just because everybody expected to do it. So that was challenging for me.
And then Darik. Hi, Darik, can you hear me?
You're going in and out, but I think I can hear you.
Oh, I apologize. So would you mind sharing your most memorable experience, challenging?
Sure. Overall, the experience was both exciting and nerve-wracking. Like a lot goes on to the preparation, and this you'd have to refer to materials that are beyond the ones you use in class, like such as your teaching materials or other things. With regards to my most memorable experience, it was during our competition in Hawassa University. It was the first round. We were going against Arba Minj University, I think, and during the defense, like the questioning rounds, we addressed to the court while sitting down. All three of us were had just sat down and we just answered the questions while we were sitting down. Like while we still managed to answer all the questions, our courtroom etiquette was not the best. And I believe that had an impact on our overall like collective result. And this is one thing you guys should remember not to do. Always address your court with like the judges with respect and always make sure to stand up. It also goes to shows how much courtroom etiquette also counts as much as content. You also need to be mindful of your overall etiquette, I guess. And that was my most memorable moment.
I think Ayer's connection is dropping in and out. So I will ask you the fourth question. How has the competition impacted your career choice? Or in what other way has it impacted you or benefited you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I heard your question.
So should we do the reverse order this time? Should we start with Darik?
Oh, bless you, Hamrawi.
Darik.
Okay. So, well, although I don't currently work in the specific field, it was quite beneficial and I still want to pursue my master's in the subject matter, which is IHL. Overall, it really enhances your public speaking skill. Also, it improves your quick thinking skills because sometimes there are questions the judges raise and you'd have to come up with a response on the spot. Like you don't have that much time to think. So it improves your quick thinking skills. At times you don't only have to appeal strictly to logic, but also to emotion. You need to show the court that you care and that you're being very respectful, but don't only focus on logic, but also the emotions, how much you care, how much this has impacted you. Really also need to go into it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hamrawi?
Yeah, I think like Darik said, that was quite beneficial in the sense that you don't really only just use it for mooting or necessarily just for law experiences, but whatever field that you go into, you will definitely use the skills that you have while mooting. I think from the current panel, I'm the only one that is currently still in law. So I'm not sure if that's mooting that has affected that or my decision when I was in the 12th grade. But I do definitely plan to use some of the mooting experience. I had never really considered arbitration as a potential career stream for me, but after doing a lot of arbitration moots, I do see how beneficial it could be. I looked into, let's say, Ethiopian solutions to arbitration. So heavily focused on the Addis Ababa Chamber of Commerce because they have quite a strong arbitration tribunal. So I've looked, it has definitely at least widened my idea of what a law career can be.
Okay, thank you. Atran?
Yeah, so as had been said, the skills that you attain when participating in moot court is not limited to like legal practice or trial attorneys only. It's transferable to other careers. But yeah, so when you're mooting, you learn to manage, hefty workloads. There's all the research that you have to do, the readings that you're expected to complete while at the same time studying and preparing for your classes. So in the process, you learn, for instance, time management skills that is applicable everywhere. And then you learn to maintain your composure as well under stressful times, which is very important when you have as many siblings as I do. You learn to work as a team as well. You collaborate to attain a common goal, and that's an important skill to learn, useful in any workplace, not just the in legal practice. But it's also a humbling experience because you learn to take feedback from your peers and to take on their takes on an issue in lieu of your own. So that's a lesson that you could apply in your day-to-day lives. And then at times you find that you are arguing a position that you'd normally find objectionable. And this in a way, helps you understand different perspectives of a certain issue. So you learn that any situation is defensible, yeah. And that is valuable, especially in legal practice, where it's all about the quality of your arguments. But yeah, you also learn, rhetorical skills, persuasion, critical reasoning, and argumentation. This comes in handy again from, in different settings in your household and workplaces. So yeah, the skill sets, they're transferable. So those are the ways that it's benefited me. I just apply it in my day-to-day life. But yeah.
Thank you. It seems like you all got very, very good skills from your mooting experience. The next question is, how did you prepare for the oral round? And what is the best way to prepare for an oral round? Do you have tips, recommendations for the participants? This time around, let's start with Hamrawi, and then we'll go to Darik, and then to Atran.
I feel like I've been called out in classrooms. Okay. So oral presentation tips. I know Dr. Jonas has gone through a few. I was listening in to maybe the last portion of the presentation he just gave. And of course, I agree with a lot of what he has said, simply because he really did help us in our IHL moot courts. So just to stop or just to avoid being redundant, let me add on to the points that he has said. He really highlighted the impact of practicing. I don't think that can be understated. I know that Atran might mention this as well, but has also really benefited from this. During our IHL moot, we used to at least practice our own parts once a day. So there was no time in which we weren't at least thinking about the case. So practice rehearsals, like, you can't understate how effective they are for your all-round preparations. Just in addition to that, I know that Dr. Jonas has mentioned doing it in front of people. He, if I'm not mistaken, mentioned doing it in front of classmates, which has its own benefits in the sense that they have a legal background as well. And they'll just maybe be like, oh, I don't understand why you mentioned so-and-so article, or why you mentioned so-and-so law. So it's always nice to have someone with a legal background. I used to also just practice in front of my family members, because although they didn't have a legal background, they would say, oh, when you were talking about your second point, you spoke really fast and I didn't understand what you were saying. So just general presentation skills is nice to practice on other people. I am a big fan of recording yourself when you're giving your presentation in your own setting. If you can do it in front of a mirror, that's fine. If you want to do it as a recording, that's fine. Because when you record yourself and look back at the maybe like 7-10 minutes presentation you've given, you notice the things that you do a lot. And there are certain body language tics that we all have, right? So I noticed that if I was talking about something in a list, I would use my left hand to list it out on my fingers, but sometimes a little too aggressively, where it can seem distracting to a judge or to other participants. So it's really nice to see yourself from a third party perspective and say, okay, I want to practice this on my body language, this on my voice, intonation, and cadence as a whole. Another thing that you can do is, luckily there are so many YouTube videos on moot courts. So if you have the ability to just listen to maybe your particular part, if you're preparing for a claimant or respondent or whatever it is, just listen to your 10-minute part and see how people before you have addressed the courts have spoken about certain laws and so on and so forth. If possible, of course, listen to the whole recording, but don't worry too much about that. Something that I think really makes the oral rounds very different than the written or the memorandum part of it is the amount of flexibility that is expected of you in your oral proceedings is something that you don't learn at all in the actual, like in your actual law school experience. I was having a conversation with Atran previously, and the last moot that I was on, I had a 14-minute presentation prepared, and on minute 3, the presiding judge asked me, okay, so I have a rough idea of what you're going to talk about. Can I ask you to talk about something else? So I was presenting the jurisdiction matter, and the judge said, okay, that's very interesting, but I'm more interested in the procedure, which was going to be presented by my co-counsel. So I had to give him a rough idea of what my co-counsel was going to say and then tie it back into jurisdiction, which I obviously hadn't planned for, but flexibility is really big on your oral round proceedings. And just one of the ways to practice flexibility is to have a roadmap of what you're going to say, as opposed to a practiced and rehearsed speech. Because we've seen, and we've also seen with Atran and a few other cases, a person will have the entire speech memorized, the entire thing. So line 1, line 2, line 3, this is what I'm going to say. And the downfall of that is if for some reason you're interrupted then your entire speech doesn't have a flow anymore, or your presenting doesn't have any flow anymore. So yeah.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Darik?
Okay, just to piggyback off of what she said, we prepared for the oral rounds by presenting in front of our coaches, teachers, previous competitors, like people who have been in the competition previously. Also, we rehearsed it individually when we had the chance. So it really gave us the time to practice as a group also, but individually as well. The best way to practice, I would say, is to present it in front of your classmates, like Hamrawi said, professors and other law school students, so that you garner the ability to speak freely in a crowd and you're not easily shaken by public speaking or speaking in front of a crowd or anything else. Usually you need to have a good strategy ahead of the competition. Sometimes it's good to hear the arguments of the other team, as it will enable your team to identify which strategy to use. Meaning, if you don't have to use all of your arguments, don't use that. Don't use them. If your opponents have not raised those points, just keep it with you. Don't provide it as a counter argument. The other important thing is to know all of your arguments, but to highlight the most important ones. Because time is of essence, you really can't go on and on about everything you know about the case. You really have to be selective of what you're going to speak and what not to, like things to hold back. So make sure you know your arguments and highlight the most important ones, I think. And the other one is just to be, I know it could be a nerve-wracking experience, it could be, scary, but do not show your opponent that you're scared or anything else. So yeah, these are the points.
Okay, thank you, Atran.
So as had been said, preparing and rehearsing is very important. Our coach used to make us write and rewrite the facts of the case in different formats over and over. I don't know if Hamrawi you remember, but we used to have to do like time charts, and then we used to have to prepare or anticipate the questions that would be forwarded by the judges, or the rebuttals that would be, or the arguments that would come from the opposing counsels. And that, I guess, added to our confidence, because we knew we were prepared. We knew what we would be confronted with once we, went into the competition. But yeah, the key is to practice more, because that way you'll be comfortable with the unexpected. The questions raised won't sound new to you, or even if they're new, you'd be able to respond to them sensibly, in a very sensible manner. The issue of memorizing, as Hamrawi mentioned, it's not a good idea to memorize. Rote reading is not, it's frowned upon. But I did do a lot of memorizing, because my bit didn't require much verbal reasoning. I was doing the introductory bit. So what I had to do was introduce my teammates and allocate the time that was allotted to us, and then reserve the time for rebuttal, which is very essential, because if you don't, you forfeit your right to rebutting the arguments that will be raised by the opposing counsel. And so I only had to do that, and I had to set the groundwork for their arguments. It was all conceptual. So I had the chance to memorize some of my script. It's actually important to have your arguments fully written down, because that way you'd be able to see the logical coherence in your argument, and then you'd be able to determine if it's too long or too short, considering the limited time you have. But going into the competition, Hamrawi is right in saying that it's best to have, a point form outline, wherein you just write your arguments, and then there'd be facts and relevant case precedents and relevant laws or statutes that you intend to mention in making your point. So practicing is important. And this is actually one of the advices that we were given by Darik and Jerusalem before we went in the competition. They warned us not to have a fully written out script with us, because then you would be tempted to refer to your script, and it would all sound mechanical. and you wouldn't be as responsive as you should be to the opposing counsel and the judges. And then if the judge interjects with a question, you wouldn't be able to zone out of your presentation, answer the question, and go back in. That would be difficult. But the way I memorized it is I did it in a very intentional and very focused way. So I understood the subject matter while memorizing it. So it came out naturally. It wasn't that I didn't do it mindlessly. So even if I were interrupted, which I wasn't, I feel like the competition that Hamrawi was referring to earlier, it was an international competition, very seasoned judges, you're more likely to be interrupted in such competitions than you would be in national competitions. If I remember correctly, the judges used to wait for us until we completed our competition, our submissions, and then they'd ask us questions. So that provided us with, certain leeway to memorize our, well, for me at least, to memorize some parts of my script and the facts of the case. But yes, you still have to memorize certain phrases. There's still a structure you're supposed to follow for your oral presentation. For instance, before you start your presentation, you'd still have to say, may it please the court, my name is Nam Nam, and then you state in what capacity you appear before the court. And when you're about to move into the next segment, the next argument, you'd state that as well, may it please the court, you ask for permission. And then also when you state your prayers for relief, you do the same. So there are certain key phrases that you'd still have to memorize. The other thing we did is when preparing for the oral competition, we made sure that we weaved our arguments with case precedents. I remember the Tadesse case, it's burnt into my mind, an IHL. So we used to, recite that. We used to memorize that. We understood what the case was about, but we also had that committed to our memory. That way the judge feels like you know exactly what you're talking about and you get points for that. And we made sure that when we practiced assuming that we were in the actual competition, and we didn't fool ourselves, thinking, oh, this is just practice, it's okay, we'll prepare later on for the actual competition. We didn't take it lightly. We practiced as though we were competing then and there. And we did it every other day before class, just 30 minutes before class. We used to meet with our coach and practice. So that made us very, it made us familiar with our arguments. So we knew, we internalized everything before heading to the competition. So yes, that helped. I think most of the other things were said. Oh, and just like lastly, when you're competing in the oral competition, be sure to be responsive to the other team. So don't speak as if you're in a vacuum. Always state, go like, we respectfully submit that they've neglected, and try to link your arguments to their arguments. That way you're not being mechanical, you're not sticking to your script regardless of what the other person says. It looks like you're thinking on your feet, which is what you're assessed on the basis of. So there's that as well. Don't be afraid to be asked questions. I know that's like intimidating, but the good thing is the questions that the judges ask you when you, as a prosecutor, for instance, would help you later on when you're the defense. You can raise the same issues against the prosecutor. So in that sense, it could be a real help. And then later on as well, if you intend to practice in refugee law, I don't know, you would be able to know what the topical legal problems or issues, the pertinent legal issues in the area are, because that's what they focus on when they come up with these moot propositions. They try to show you what the legal issues that actual lawyers practicing in that field face on a day-to-day basis. So it's not so bad. I remember I used to be very intimidated, but in hindsight, it's actually beneficial. But yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I think the key takeaway from all three of you is it's important to prepare, but it's also vital to leave some room for flexibility and things that may happen during the proceedings. The next question is, what is the appropriate moot court demeanor? I think Darik should take this one since you already gave us an example of this, and then Atran can take the second one, and then Hamrawi will take the third spot.
Yes, I kind of tried to raise courtroom etiquette before, but when you're addressing the court, one of the courtroom demeanors you should be aware of or be mindful of is make sure you stand up when the judge walks in and be only seated after they are seated. Like that shows respect to the judge and also to the courtroom you're in. Be very respectful to the court and also mindful of the language you use. Address the judge with correct terminology, like may it please the honorable court or may it please the court. Use words like that you wouldn't normally use, but it's very important to use such type of words or phrases. And do not speak over your judge. If a judge interjects at any point, just stop talking immediately. Do not try to speak over your judge or anything, and address to your judge as your honor at all times. The other point is do not simply read your arguments, like try to memorize the facts and make it seem natural, not really recited or rehearsed. Don't present your arguments as opinions. Rather say it as a matter of fact and show that you actually care about the case at hand and you're just not there reciting a case that you just read. Make sure to show that you actually really care about the case at hand and that show that to the court, like let the court know that you care about the specific case at hand with your body language and with the language you use. And also do not try to lecture your judges. That comes off as impolite. Just tell them the facts of the case, be very respectful, but do not try to tell the judge what is happening or what is going on, because the chances are they know more about the situation at hand more than you. So just be respectful. Don't come off as rude or impolite. The other one is stand up when answering questions raised by the judges. This is the point I raised earlier. At any point, do not sit down, just stand up and address the court. Whenever judges are asking you a question, make sure you stand up first. And also allot time at the beginning of rebuttal, for your rebuttal. Make sure like you have allotted certain minutes of your time for rebuttal, because at the end, if you haven't already allotted such time, there isn't much you can really do, because the other team can be talking about the rebuttal, and if you don't have time, you can't really say anything. So make sure you have allotted time, and make sure you have to be also mindful of the time. Like just check that whenever you're speaking and whenever your friend is saying something, just tap them on the shoulder to let them know that time is running out or they're going beyond time. And the overall one is that your outfit should also respect some modicum of like respect and some form of professionalism. So be mindful of the following things.
Okay, thank you. That was very insightful. Atran?
I think Darik she has it covered. I don't know what else is missing. Yeah, it's important to be polite, not raise your voice too high. Although I remember Dr. Yunus was mentioning something about voice modulation and how that's important whenever you're placing emphasis on a certain argument, with that in mind. But try not to make it too high pitched or like too low. And then when the judge is speaking, listen attentively. Do not murmur in agreement or validate the statements of the judges as if he's or she's your friend. Like, oh yes, that was a great point. I was thinking the same. So like that sort of informal interaction that doesn't work in the court. If you assume that you're in an actual court, I think it'd be easier to know how to comport yourself. I know this goes without saying, but no humor in the court, it might backfire. So just in case you're like me. Anyways, address the opposing counsel respectfully. I know in the heat of the moment, you want to pounce on something that they might have said that's wrong, but don't do that because it reflects badly on you. And don't flail your hands while talking if you do not have control over your hands. Like myself, I'd advise you not to do that. And yeah, wear formal attire, dress appropriately. Don't dress like you're going, for a ceremony or an occasion, or don't dress down with like a shirt tucked in on one side and one just out. So yeah, those are pretty much it. I think Darik had it covered, so I was just here repeating what she said. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamrawi.
I think both Darik and Atran have covered most of it. I know that Dr. Yonas has also mentioned a few, because I remember him talking about appropriate attire and ways in which you address a court. I would recommend, because moot court is simply a reflection of what an actual court would be, right? I would simply recommend going on Google and saying, okay, what is the appropriate court demeanor? And you'll find a very long list of things that are appropriate to wear, how to address a court, and so on and so forth. So that, like, really Google is your friend in throughout the entire mooting experience. One thing that I would recommend specifically is no chewing gum. And this is if you're a mootie, or if you are in the audience, or just anyone in the courts. I don't think people understand how really distracting it can be. And I know some judges who are extremely picky about matters like this. So no chewing gum, sit as professional as possible. I know that when you are addressing the court, you will often be standing and will be speaking quite professionally. But if I am speaking and Atran is to my side and she's slouching and she's scribbling, it just doesn't give the best impression to the judge as a team, because you are being judged as a collective. So think of the way that you are acting even when necessarily the spotlight isn't on you particularly. So yeah, sit up straight. I know some judges are extremely strict about certain things. I have met a judge in the moot court competition who has taken away marks because people were sitting with their legs crossed, which seems very like a very small point, but at the end of the day, it's about respecting the court and respecting the judge as a whole. Another just point of administration that should be mentioned, especially if you're a mootie, but if you're anyone in the courtroom, please have your phone on silent. It is very distracting. If you hear it buzz, forget if it's actually ringing. So if possible, just turn off your phone. But if you're using your phone to keep time, then make sure it's on silent, turn off notifications if you need to, just do whatever so that it is as silent as possible and everybody's focusing on what should be focused on. Yeah, I think that's general courtroom demeanor.
Thank you. These are things that seem simple, but that could actually cost you the competition. So it's something to take note of. The last question is, how did you make the best out of the mooting experience? Can you hear me? Can you please mute your mic if you're not speaking? Thank you. How did you make the best out of the mooting experience? And how did you build networks during the competition? And how has that network been valuable to you? I think we can go Atran, Darik, then Hamrawi.
Yeah, you've been very fair. Thank you so much. So I guess, how did I make the best out of the mooting experience? So I just tried not to take that competitive atmosphere that pervaded the courtroom, the moot courtroom, outside. And I assumed a very different persona when interacting with the students in the dining hall and elsewhere. I was completely myself, goofy and an extrovert. And Desse kids, they're very sociable, they're very warm and friendly. So it was really easy to make connections with them. It helped that we all dined together in this very long table. So it kind of disabled us from isolating ourselves in a certain corner. We were supposed to share the table. I don't know if that was deliberate, but if it was genius. We had to interact that way. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, that is the attitude that I adopted. I tried not to let the competitive aspect of the whole exercise get in the way, which is actually a hard thing to do because at the end of the day, you're representing your school, and there's that burden. Your performance sort of reflects on how well the school's mentored you, and you don't want to paint the school in a negative light. So there's that pressure, but it's important that for competitions, they're more than that. So how has it been valuable to me? I have yet to see the connections that I've made there. Besides the occasional "Hi, how's it going?" and checking in on each other. So far, there's not been much to derive from it. There's, yeah. So that's all. That's about it.
Thank you. Darik?
Okay, I think the best way to see the mooting experience would be, at the end of the day, it's just a competition. I know it doesn't seem like it at the very moment, but at the end of the day, it's just a competition. Don't take yourself too seriously outside of the court. It's just, it won't have that much huge impact on your grades or anything. This is something you're doing out of passion, and this is something you're doing just to garner the experience, not because it has any other extra points that you will have. So just be cognizant of that it's just a competition, and whatever happens, happens. So do not be very in the courtroom. Make sure you are very, like, you pay attention to everything, but once you're out of that courtroom, there isn't much you can really do. So just be respectful and try to build networks, be friendly with the other team, like the other university students. Try to do those things. And building a good relationship with the organizers is quite beneficial, as you will have a bigger opportunity beyond the competition. You know, if you know your organizers and you are very respectful towards them, whenever there is like an internship program or similar opportunities, they might give you that opportunity because they have some form of relationship, like they know you from before. So you might get opportunities afterwards. Also, it's good to build network with your peers, coaches, and organizers, and all of those people that are involved. I try to keep in touch with some people that organized the competition, and I'm still able to, like, I can require assistance at any given time from those people because I have built that relationship in a sense. Like, for instance, during our competition, we had a judge that was who I currently work with. So, you know, you never know when you're going to cross paths at some point. So it always is a good, really good opportunity. And in general, you know, know that network is essential when building a career. So it might come in handy at some point in your life. So just outside of the courtroom, network, be friends with, like, try to be friendly with everyone, things like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Hamrawi?
Yeah, I mean, most of the things Atran and Darik have also mentioned now. I think the importance of networking can't be understated. I really agree with Atran in the sense of, like, there are two personas that you have. There's an in courtroom and outside of courtroom persona. Something to remember in your outside of courtroom persona is, especially with your peers, these are people that are around the same age as you, have been dealing with the same things, have been stressed about the same deadlines. So there is very much a sense of camaraderie and you know, like, going through stressful things together creates the best friendships. So I think that just spending time with people and spending such an intense amount of time with people, right? It's not like at school where you see each other for maybe 2 hours in your class and then you go around and do whatever you go around and do. You're eating breakfast together, and then you're practicing together, and then you're in the training together, and it's lunch. You're together for about 3-4 days. These are the only people you will see, whether it be as your teammates or competitors or organizers. So it really is in your best interest to put your best foot forward. As mentioned by Darik, I think the Ethiopian legal sphere is very small. The Ethiopian legal mooting sphere is even smaller. You will definitely see these people once the competition is over. These will be people that are going to write your recommendations. These are going to people that are going to put in referrals for you or a good word for you. You will probably work with them in the same office. They might become your employer. So it really is in your best interest to try and maintain that bridge and that connection that you have formed. As we were preparing for this, we were having a discussion with Atran, and I think both Atran and I, in our IHL moots that we did together, were very sociable and made a good effort at trying to create connections. I personally would, maybe a point of constructive criticism for myself is, don't just create connections, but maintain them. So it's not just, you know, it's not just a hi bye. It's not a, oh, are you having, I don't know, fish for lunch today, or that type of conversation. It's taking the number or the contact information of a person you want. It's, I think, especially with the last few moots that I did, because most of them were virtual at the end, I would just be like, oh, okay, it was really nice meeting you. And this could be to my opposing counsel or organizers or judges. And I'd say, I'd really like to stay in contact with you. Here's my LinkedIn information, because that's just the way to stay social currently, or at least professionally social, right? So I would really recommend whatever form or whatever platform that you plan to use. I think LinkedIn just makes the most sense because it has a lot of brand recognition for me, to just say, okay, this is my information. I hope to connect with you in 2 years, a year, 2 months, whatever. And it's just easier to ask someone a favor, start up a conversation with them if you already have an existing foundation for that relationship, like Darik mentioned. It would be very hard for me to go up to a person who I know has legal knowledge, but I've never met, and say, hi, I'm working on a case and I need help. As opposed to if I went up to Darik or Jerusalem and said, listen, I know it's been a few years, how are you doing? I really need help with so-and-so case in Refugee. Do you have any contacts? Do you have any laws? Just point me in some direction. Yeah, so I would really recommend that. If you have a group chat or whatever form of communication, just put in your information, put in your LinkedIn, put in your, my name is so-and-so, this is how you can contact me, email, whatever you feel comfortable with, and try to build and maintain the networks that you've created.
Thank you. You've given us some practical and helpful tips. I think it's very important to remember that it's a competition and we're all students and we're all trying to learn. Now it's time for the participants to ask questions. Do you have any questions for our panelists? They've had a lot of practical experience that can help you in the upcoming moot court. Is there anyone with any questions?
I think Bontu has a question. Her hand is raised.
Okay, Bontu, you can go on, and then I'm on.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. This was like a really great experience, and thank you all for sharing your experiences in moot court. I specifically have a question for Atran and another question for the others. What do you think for Atran? What do you think was the game changer for the fact that you were selected as the best speaker for the moot court? And my other question is, if you had the chance to redo one specific moot court competition, what do you think would be something you're proud that, oh, I'm really glad I did not change this? And what is the factor that you wished you changed so that the consequences would have probably changed? And thank you.
Should I go on? Or?
Yeah, I think it's better if you answer the questions now, or how do you want to proceed?
I could go ahead and answer the question. So those are great questions, Muntu. What I did that I believe helped me win Best Speaker is I practiced a lot. I know you hear this often and it sounds like we're just saying it, but it's something that you should do. Just rehearse your script over and over. I read the course material as well, and we had a lot of references that were being sent to us by the coach. He made sure that we were well versed by the time we appeared for the competition. So I think that's what's helped me, win Best Speaker. I wrote and rewrote my script in different ways, as I said earlier. I memorized it word for word, especially the introductory bit. But when I memorized it, as I said, I was doing it in a very intentional way. So I was able to internalize what I was reading, and I just understood it very well. So practicing is all. Yeah, that's all I did. So if I had a redo, what is something that I would change and with some
Okay, thank you, Atran. I think Amanuel, you had your hand up. Amanuel Gita. Can you please unmute yourself? We
Sorry,
can't hear you.
my question is this moot court competitions and this as we are a student, most of the time we have a class, and these two good opportunities contradict each other. But what is your experience to manage these two contradicting good opportunity? If you have experience, I would like to ask you share information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amanuel. I think all three of you can answer this question and share your experience with us. So who wants to start? It's gonna be like a class again. Hamrawi, do you want to take this?
And I knew it was coming too. I knew it was coming because the second you said, who wants to go first? My instinct was to look away. Yeah, old habits die hard. Yeah, Manuel, I think that's definitely on a small level, you need to manage the 20 minutes you're given in the moot courts, but also on a larger scale, you need to be a full-time student and do your experience and practicing, and you have other opportunities and so on and so forth. I'm not sure if there has been any change now, but I think most of you are in your fourth year, and fourth year was the most academically time-consuming for me. I just had the most number of courses as a fourth-year student. So that is definitely going to be something that you will have to handle. Tips in which
Hamrawi?
Sorry about that, my internet gave out.
No.
Am I back now?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. So yeah, specific tips to handle time management. There are going to be certain times when mooting is going to be more time consuming. I remember maybe the last week before our memorandum submission, I just had no time to think about it, and reworking and adding and taking away things from our oral pleading. Maybe the last week or so before our competition, we had gotten everything down and it was simply just standing there and doing the presentation. So there's that. I am a very firm believer in having a calendar, either written or digitally, just because I'm very bad at forgetting deadlines. So if you look at my Google Calendar, you will see very specific things put in. So I will have, if it's class at 8:30 in the morning, it will be 8:30 to 10:30. And then the 30 minutes in between, I will have scheduled consult with Atran about case 2.0 or whatever it is. So having it written down really helps me keep track of things that I need to. And if necessary, I know that it's not very professional to admit, but I spend probably an unhealthy amount of time on social media. If I have deadlines approaching, if I have a moot court, if I have an exam, I will just take away a few more minutes off Instagram and dedicate that to my schoolwork or mooting. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamrawi. I realize that you haven't had a chance to answer Bontu's question. Do you want to answer it now, or do you want to answer it right after? I think it's better if you answer it after Atran answers the question that Manuel raised.
Yeah, I think Hamrawi has it's an hour of your day to preparing for the moot court. I competed back when I was in my second year, so the course load, like the workload, this school workload that I had was, relatively speaking, compared to what you have on your doc, it's less. So I can't say what will work for you. But what I did was I practiced every other day, at least regularly, for like 40 to an hour. And once you made that a habit, make that into a habit, I think you will be able to make time for it, because you'll get used to it. But earlier, Bontu, while I was listening to Amanuel's question, a response to your question, sorry if that's okay. You asked me what it was that I would do differently. So what I would do differently is during the final rounds, we were asked a question by the judge that we were not able to answer, the three of us. But Hansen took the stage, and she was so confident, and she handled it so well, better than any one of us would have handled it. She finessed like it's nobody's business. She managed to do great. But during that time, I was thinking maybe if I had, applied myself a bit more, to study the IHL course material, if I'd spent more time, maybe I'd be able to respond to this question. But then I was also thinking, we had the option. Hamrawi had the option of bringing that question back to the team. And we could have asked the judges, can we have a few minutes to discuss this question and get back to you? But we didn't, because we thought we were being evaluated for individual performance. We just, the pressure at the moment, it messes with your judgment. So we didn't do that. So I able to answer that final round. It didn't really affect, maybe it did affect our performance, but we performed relatively better than the other team, so we managed to win. But if the other team had actually put up a very strong front, that might have affected. But the way Hamrawi handled it, though, still kudos about that. Anyways, yeah, so maybe that I would change. Maybe I would apply myself more. Is the question. Yeah, that's the answer that I was going to give. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Hamrawi, do you want to go back and answer Bontu's question?
Yeah, so I know that Bontu asked two questions and the second with a two-parter. I know that the first one was addressed to Atran, and I think Atran's answer is in line with everything we've said in terms of practice. But just to give an answer from a third party, because I'm not Atran and I saw Atran doing her speeches, of course she practiced. I remember I would get calls at like midnight and she'd be like, so did you look at the new law about, and I'm like, no, I clearly have not looked at that law. So her level of practice was impeccable. Another thing that she used to do, and I don't even think that she would do this consciously, but just before speaking, she would stand up and take a very short breath before she starts. So she would say, my name is Atran. And I think that has a sense of captivating the speaker, because you're excited to hear what she's going to say. It also has the effect of physically calming you down, right? I feel like when you're nervous, you're not breathing as much, your heart is beating. So that one breath really makes a difference. As Atran mentioned, when we were doing the IHL one, she would be our first speaker. She was the one to start us off. And because she was the first speaker, she was also tasked with creating a roadmap for the team. So she would be the one that was saying, because of issue 1 with jurisdiction, issue 2 with procedure, issue 3 with timing, we hold that our client is guilty or not guilty or whatever you're pleading, right? She would have the roadmap put in extremely simple language. Her first few sentences would not be legal. It's not that she's citing a particular article. It's not that she's citing a particular body of law. She would just give you the story. She would say, because of this, our General X did that. Because of this, so and so. And her conclusion would come maybe in her third sentence. She would say, because of that, our client is innocent. And that just gives the judges a rough idea of where the team is going. And it's much easier to follow when you know what's coming next. So I think that's one of the many reasons that Atran deserves deserves the Best Oralist Award. Going back to your second point, and I'm happy that you skipped over me because I really didn't have an answer about what I would change. I think, of course, there are definitely things that you go back to and say, oh, if I had just cited so-and-so case instead of the one that I chose, or if I had, like Atran mentioned, if I had consulted with my co-counsels, there's always something that you want to change. I think, fortunately, none of the things that I wanted to change would have had a big effect on our final results because we were quite successful in the IHL moots. However, in the semifinals, and correct me if I'm wrong, Atran, I know that Atran was thinking this, but has not mentioned it, which is a sign of a good co-counsel and a good friend. But I was the last speaker in the, I think we were the defense, and I was talking I was the last speaker in our IHL semifinals. And I had run out of time. Like I had looked at the clock, or Atran had pointed to the clock, and I had 30 seconds left, and I had like one entire issue left. So I go through it. I go like I essentially wrap through my last parts, and I'm just so excited that I have finished in time and have not run over allotted time. The issue that creates is, although I was the last speaker, I had forgotten to raise prayers of relief. So we had essentially given a 20 minutes presentation as a team, and we had nothing to present to the judges. We had given them a story, but there was no action for the judges to take. And I sat down, and the second I forgot to say prayers of relief, I instantly regretted it, because the opposing counsel, and this is definitely something that is a good thing, like they should have definitely done this. The first thing the opposing counsel said is, Your Honor, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that opposing counsel has not mentioned prayers of relief. And I don't think the judge had noticed until my opponent had said that. So I had beat myself up over it. I was like, we're so close to it. We're so close to being finalists, and I can't believe this is what's going to stop us. And I remember having quite a long and emotional discussion with my co-counsels, both Atran and Kursama, and them just being like, you know what, you did your best. Like, it's fine. You know, what has happened in the past has already happened. Luckily, that didn't negatively affect us, because we eventually did make it to the finals and we ended up winning that competition. But that was something that I really wish I could have changed. What's something that I would have done again if I could do it all over again? I was mentioning this on a phone call that we had yesterday with Atran. I think one of the things that I would always choose to do, no matter if it's with any competition, is the dynamics of our group, the dynamics of Atran, myself, and Kursama was fantastic. I would go into any moot court competition, I would go into any court, and if I had them by my side, I would sigh a breath of relief. So something that I would do over and over again is pick the teammates that I did. And it was just a happy coincidence, because our coach is the one that assigned us to go into that. So I think that is definitely a stroke of genius on Amin's side, but I would always go in with Atran and Kursama by my side. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. The tips you gave us were very practical. They were very helpful. You've told us it's just a competition, to not take anything too seriously, but to also be mindful of what's happening in the court and to adjust accordingly to things that might happen in a moot court, because things do change quite frequently. Thank you. I'm sure the participants learned a lot too. This was very insightful. We appreciate you being here with us.